Okay. Lizette Pelletier has been state archivist since 2014. She has 35 years of experience in the field of archives and records management and is active in disaster preparedness and emergency response for cultural heritage organizations. She serves as the chairperson of the State Historical Records Advisory Board, the central advisory body for historical records preservation, which provides archival education to and facilitates cooperation among the state's historical records repositories. So welcome, Lizette, and take it away.
All right, thank you very much, Jenna. All right, let's see if I can get my screen up here. All right, come on. Technology, it's always so wonderful. Okay. All right, so good afternoon. It's nice to be here with you. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm hoping this doesn't happen, but because of the recent storm, I need to have a repair person come out this afternoon. My daughter was supposed to be here to take care of it, but she got called into work. So everybody cross your fingers that for once they show up late. Okay. So as Jenna said, in the interest of time, if you can type any questions you have in the chat area, and then we'll answer them at the end. It's my experience that most people interested in the topic of preserving family records have been doing family history research for some time. As a result, they have accumulated a significant collection of items. This may include items that are inherited from other family members. We began searching our family history around the time my mother's family celebrated the 100th anniversary of my great-grandparents filing for their homestead in central Minnesota. Unfortunately, a major wildfire in the fall of 1918 swept across an area approximately the size of New Haven County. It destroyed most personal records such as naturalization documents, correspondence, church records for marriages, births, and deaths. Lost were records of both my parents' families from the 1880s through 1918. The little that remained was dispersed among the large number of two generations of cousins. And fortunately, my mother was able to gather together photocopies of some documents and reprints of photographs for the family history she created and printed for the occasion. I hope that my talk this afternoon assists you in preserving those precious items that you have taken under your care. As you well know, family history resources come in many forms. These include information for and about that we create for ourselves or that is created by other entities to document our existence either socially or legally. Until the late 20th and early 21st centuries, most of these records were tangible items and usually created on paper. Most have lasted many years, except for disasters, even if not in the best condition. They could be viewed and examined without the aid of devices. This is a photograph of my great-grandfather, Napoleon Buckwitz. The smaller photo is my great-grandmother, Catherine, my grandfather, John, and his younger sister, Sophie. In the last 40 years, records creation has changed dramatically. Most records created today are no longer something that you can hold in your hand. Scanning transforms tangible records into the ones and zeros that compose an electronic record, and the original paper records discarded. At the same time, we are creating potential new genealogical resources that will exist only electronically on some type of storage media, a server, or in the cloud. And by the way, a cloud is nothing more than a large group of hard drives and software that someone else owns and maintains. Unfortunately, the newer technology, the greater the risk that the information created by it could be lost. Furthermore, because electronic media can store much more data than paper or microfilm in the same space, the amount of loss is exponentially greater. The materials used to create records and how they are stored impacts how long a record will last. Various materials have different life expectancy. Please note that the lifespans listed on this slide are dependent on those being properly made and stored. If we are not mindful, very little information about our generation will survive despite our best intentions. While the original copy of the family portrait of my great-grandmother, my grandfather, and his sister as young children has survived over 115 years in reasonable shape, digital portraits of my family may not even last 10 years. Conservators use the term inherent vice to describe any property that causes a material to self-destruct. Every media used to create records, parchment made from animal skins, paper, cloth, film, computer disks, and thumb drives, has some type of inherent vice. Items made from poor quality materials or with poor manufacturing processes have multiple inherent vices and will deteriorate quickly. Mass production tends to increase this risk. The cheaper the method or materials, the greater the chance of self-destruction. The most common vice is poor manufacturing techniques. For example, the chemical alum was used for decades to make paper waterproof and prevent ink from being absorbed into the paper fibers and spreading. But alum reacts with moisture in the air to form sulfuric acid, which eats away at paper. Lignin, a natural component of wood pulp used to make affordable paper and cardboard, causes them to eventually turn yellow and look old. Chlorine is used to whiten paper and remove lignin, but chlorine residue also weakens paper. And if you want a good example of this, you can look at the picture over on the left side of the screen. You will see a child's drawing, which was created by my oldest daughter, who is now in her 30s. That was done on newsprint, and I had put it into a folder with some correspondence I had received and put in a box. And I came across it a while ago when I was looking for illustrations of various things. And you can see that the newsprint has darkened because there's lignin in that paper. And so around the edges are much browner than the center. And then the correspondence that was next to it, that paper has transferred the acid into it, turning it brown as well, but you can see again it's lighter in the center. And then the next paper after that is starting to turn, and then the paper after that is white. So you can see the progression of how the acids in the paper is moving through. And actually the paper with the correspondence on it was a fairly good quality paper. So acid does transfer. Now in the center picture, that is a photograph of my husband's grandmother and his two uncles and father. And the original photograph the colors have been deteriorating. So you're getting more of a sepia tone as the colors fade. And I forget my chemistry as to which colors fade faster than others, but you can see how that's fading. And then finally down there, you can, in the right-hand corner, or bottom right corner, is a CD, and that has a rot on it. Again, poor manufacturing, as well as a combination of some other things we're going to talk about. The plastic, a CD is actually a plastic sandwich, or a sandwich of 2 layers of plastic with a metal film in between and some adhesive. The adhesive has broken down, so air has gotten in and caused oxidization of the metal component on the center. And that's where you get the different discolorization. And that disc is probably not readable or in a computer now. Archivists and librarians, among others, convinced the US government that the states passed laws in the early 1990s requiring that official records be created and published on permanent paper, which has a chemical buffer to prevent damage from acids, among other things. The new standards created a demand for buffered paper, leading paper producers to switch most production to the higher standards. Most office paper sold for home computers and for copy machines is now considered acid-free. However, recycled paper may be environmentally friendly, but repeated recycling may weaken the paper fibers. You need to be aware of when records were created and what type of paper was used. The same holds true for photographs, audio and videotapes, and the multitude of electronic media. Film photography involves creating a reaction with the chemicals layered on a base material and then stopping the process at a certain point to achieve the clearest and best image. However, failure to completely end the process means that images continue to develop and will eventually disappear because the chemical residues cause the colored pigments to break down. Commercial one-hour photo stores back in the 80s and 90s were focused on speed and convenience when developing original film or creating prints back in the days of film cameras. Home movies on film or videotape become much more fragile by handling them for viewing. The same for audio tapes, even if the equipment is still available. Color movies on film fade just like color photographs if they were not properly processed. The event of magnetic and electronic records means that records now have two inherent devices: the medium in which they were produced and stored, and the equipment necessary to read or access the information. When CDs first came out, they were supposedly indestructible, but as I pointed out in the image, CDs are susceptible to CD rot. Companies currently sell storage on the cloud as a permanent storage solution. The companies that provide the access and the hardware can be sold or go out of business. Alternatively, you can no longer afford or want to pay for the service. So how do you get your photos, movies, documents back, and where do you put them? Inks and dyes create other preservation problems. One type of ink commonly used in the 19th century was iron gall ink, made from iron salts and tannic acids from vegetable sources. This ink is acidic and eats away at the paper until there is only a hole where the writing used to be. You can see that in the upper right-hand corner there. That white spot is the paper that just fell out. Even very good rag paper can be seriously damaged by iron gall ink. Today, many of our inks, from felt tip pens to inkjet printers, are water soluble and will run if the documents get wet. Some pictures and documents printed on inkjet printers are not stable because the ink used is water soluble. And you can see in the center there, that diary, the ink has run because it got wet at some point. Typical adhesives used to attach photos in scrapbooks or recipe clippings in a notebook fail over time. The adhesive dries up, the cellophane falls off, and all that remains is a nasty stain and two or more unattached pieces of paper. Book binding adhesives can fail, causing pages to fall out or the entire book to fall apart. On the other hand, magnetic photo albums that were popular in the 1970s and 80s have very fine strips of adhesive that hold the items in place. Unfortunately, the adhesives used in these products works too well, and over time the photos or other items become impossible to remove except by a professional conservator. Temperature and humidity are crucial factors for how long records will last. As temperatures rise, certain chemical reactions occur more rapidly, causing materials to deteriorate faster. If the environment is too dry, paper may become brittle faster. If it is too moist, the moisture helps feed other chemical reactions and other deteriorations occur. In addition, temperatures over 70 degrees Fahrenheit with a relative humidity over 55 or 60% encourages mold growth. Fluctuations cause more damage. Paper swells and shrinks as it absorbs and releases water, and the daily increase and nightly decrease in temperatures causes the same level of damage as changes in humidity. Finally, the lights from windows, overhead lights, photocopiers or scanners causes paper to bleach or yellow and ink and cloth bindings to fade. Any exposure to light causes damage, but natural sunlight and fluorescent lights also include ultraviolet waves, which is the most damaging. Light damage is cumulative and irreversible. High light levels cause damage quickly, but low light levels for long periods eventually causes the same amount of permanent damage. The inks can't be restored to its original legibility, and the paper can't be made stronger. The environment and where we live has the biggest impact on our health. The same is true for family records. Avoid areas that experience temperature and humidity extremes and are susceptible to disasters. This means the usual places people frequently use for storage: basements, attics, garages, breezeways, etc. While the basement may have never flooded yet, it can still be damp. The probability of mold growth increases in dark, damp locations. In addition, out of sight is out of mind. This is true even if your basement is finished. I have a cousin who they moved into a new house. They had a finished basement. She placed a number of boxes with family photographs underneath the steps and forgot about them. And when she opened them up, having run across them, the items in there were moldy and all stuck together. So she was heartbroken that she had lost a number of things. Water and waste pipes can leak, causing additional threat. Attics, garages, and breezeways experience extreme heat and humidity fluctuations daily as well as seasonally. The best storage area is in the main part of the house where temperatures and relative humidity tend to be relatively stable. Remember, if you are comfortable, your records are comfortable. If you have a small enough collection, a hall or bedroom closet that is not frequently accessed is an excellent choice. It creates a stable microenvironment insulated from the rest of the world. For a large amount of materials, you will need to determine if the space you have chosen is suitable. For paper and books, the recommended environment is a constant year-round temperature of 65 to 70 degrees and a relative humidity of 40 to 45 degrees. Digital records require a cooler and drier environment. Achieving this year-round for a whole building is expensive and time-consuming. It requires constant monitoring. Even at a large institution like the State Library, we do not have the resources or facilities to achieve this. A more realistic approach is to create an environment that allows minimal daily and gradual changes from one season to the next. The first step is to monitor the area and its environment. Relatively inexpensive digital hygrometer thermometers, like the one that was in the previous slide, are available online or from a hardware store. You just simply check the temperature at the same time each day for at least a month. Keep a little chart showing the day-to-day or week-to-week changes. If there are large increases and decreases, you need to find another area to store the records. Some other low-cost, no-cost climate control improvements are keeping your thermostat on the lower side. Seal any windows to prevent an exchange of air between inside and outside, especially if it's very dry or humid out. Keep your heating and cooling equipment at a constant setting, or as constant as possible. If you absolutely must store records in a finished basement area, the record should never touch the exterior walls because moisture condenses on walls when the interior and exterior temperatures differ. Moisture can then wick from the wall into your storage containers. Keep containers at least 4 inches off the floor using non-absorbent materials. Wooden pallets or just wooden planks absorb water, so don't use them because they'll draw the water from the floor up through the wood and then into your containers. You never know when a pipe might leak or burst. Increase air circulation by using a fan and running a dehumidifier. If necessary, run them continuously not continuously, but for the period of time when there's high humidity. However, remember to regularly check and empty the collection pan on the dehumidifier, or you will have created your own flood. Even in a stable environment, how you house and store items can either prevent or cause further damage. Let's look at some poor storage choices. Wood shelves release harmful chemicals from varnish, paints, and stains. Plywood is even worse because of the adhesive used in its manufacture. Some paints used on metal shelves are also harmful. No one here has not had a document stored in a 3-ring binder where the ink on the pages adheres to the cover and then peels off the document. Polyvinyl chloride used to make this plastic releases gases that cause a chemical reaction with the ink. The metal rings can rip or tear documents. Labels won't stay stuck on a vinyl binder. While most papers are stable, standard manila folders as well as envelopes and photocopier boxes are usually high in acid that can transfer to the records placed in them. Lamination may make documents tear resistant, but the heat in plastic causes irreversible damage. The plastic eventually breaks down and discolors. If a highly acidic item, such as a newspaper clipping, is sealed tight in between the plastic, the acid continues to deteriorate, often at a faster rate. As I already mentioned, the adhesive in magnetic photo albums is often acidic and usually damages the photo or the item in it. Let's now look at some good alternatives. If using shelves, they should be made of metal and covered with a powdered coated paint. Make sure the items are properly arranged on each shelf and fully supported by the shelf and not hanging over the edge. Store most unboxed books, films, magnetic tapes, and CDs upright on the shelf, just as you would, they'd all look like books, and that they're not hanging over the edge. Never store books with the spine up in the air so that you can see the text block from the end, as the text block will eventually pull away from the spine. Shelve oversized boxes and books flat. Arrange larger books or boxes underneath the smaller ones. Do not stack too many boxes on top of each other to avoid crushing the lower boxes. If you don't have shelves, use sturdy double-walled, acid-free cardboard or stable plastic boxes made from the materials that I have listed here. 1 cubic foot boxes are recommended for ease of lifting. Make especially sure not to stack boxes more than 3 or 4 high, with the lighter boxes on top to avoid collapse from the weight of the contents. It is also a good idea to box or enclose bound materials such as ledgers, scrapbooks, and diaries. This provides additional protection from dirt and moisture. If putting books in a box, place them flat or on their spines. Again, you don't want the spines up in the air, that has the information on the title up in the air. If using an envelope, it's a good idea to wrap the book first in buffered tissue paper to prevent against rubbing when inserting or removing the book from an envelope. Another option is a 4-flap protective box or phase box. The materials are inexpensive, easily found, and with a little practice, easy to make. All you need is some buffered oak tag or Bristol board, a straight edge razor, some school glue, a rule for measuring and to use as a straight edge, and a bone folder or non-serrated butter knife. Scrapbooking or the creation of heritage scrapbooks remains popular these days. This is a wonderful way to preserve both documents and photographs and to give them some context. As with other materials we've discussed, make sure that the books, pages, enclosures, stickers, and pens are all stable and not acidic. Most things today claim to be non-acidic, but be wary. As always, you get what you pay for. There are several other options for storing photographs. Use neutral plastic pages with a pocket for each image bound in a neutral album. If you choose to store your photos individually, use paper or neutral plastic sleeves in a buffered box. The same should be done for negatives. Always properly label items in pencil, as ink can bleed and stain the item. Be aware that as alkaline buffering combats the acids in air pollution, the alkalines are used up. Neutral paper is damaged by acidic air pollution. In time, even buffered paper can deteriorate, although this takes a very long time. If you notice discoloration or brittleness, it's time to replace the folder, envelope, or paper. Where do you get the proper boxes and materials? There are several suppliers such as Gaylord Archival and University Products that sell boxes, folders, photo sleeves. Please remember that there is no defined standard for archival. You want materials that are either acid-free, neutral, or buffered as appropriate. Related to storage is how you handle your documents. Here are some common items to avoid that can cause damage. Rubber bands can dry up, mummify, adhere to the paper, causing it to rip when removed, and may leave a stain on the paper. Metal paper clips and staples rust over time. A rusty staple may leave a permanent stain when removed, and because the rust makes the staple or paper clip rough, it can tear the paper. Use only stainless steel staples and paper clips if possible. Otherwise, fold a small piece of acid-free paper or polyester over the document before attaching the paper clip. And you can see here on the right-hand side that's what's done there. Okay. Leaving bookmarks in place can be a problem. Acid from some bookmarks will migrate into the permanent paper and cause deterioration where it touches it. Pressed flowers and other kinds of natural bookmarks may be romantic, but they also cause damage. A forgotten pencil used as a bookmark will damage the paper and the spine of the book from the additional pressure over any length of time. Never, ever, ever use sticky notes on your documents, photographs, or other items. The adhesive can transfer to the item and often lifts the ink off the page or parts of the CD or DVD. And that's what happened down in this image down here on the lower left-hand side. That's caused by one of those sticky notes. Finally, always wash and dry your hands well. While handling paper can leave your hands feeling dry, never use lotions, even the greaseless kind. Handle photographs and negatives by the edge to avoid leaving skin oils on them. Gloves may be used, but if hands are clean, it is really not necessary to use gloves. Good housekeeping is also critical. Storing valuable records in an unorganized area full of unused or seasonal items puts your records at risk. Clutter prevents you from noticing a problem before it gets out of hand, especially a pest infestation. Storage areas that attract rodents or are hospitable to bugs increases the chance of losing your records. Mice can gnaw through just about any type of container and love to shred paper for nesting materials. Cellulose from wood fibers and other plant materials are a favorite food source for many types of bugs. As I've mentioned, dirt and air pollution leave grit that scratch, stain, and weaken paper, and photographs by making the paper more acidic. It can make digital storage media unreadable. Finally, to ensure that your records are protected and accessible, keep the area well organized. Boxes of records stored in the same space with other materials such as off-season clothing, camping gear, and recyclable items may be mistaken by for junk by a helpful family member and accidentally tossed out. Clean it regularly, just as you would your living space. Store food and beverages away from your collection. Separate unrelated materials. Finally, practice good records management. Only keep the papers and other items you really need. Properly label boxes and create a container list. You will be able to locate records quickly and return them to the proper location. Having a well-organized area reduces the chance of accidental loss. Digitizing records and photographs is a great way to preserve and make information accessible. It also makes it easy to share with interested family members, genealogists, or other researchers. However, digital clutter can be even more dangerous than physical clutter. Without proper file naming and a folder structure, it is nearly impossible to find a file. And I'd like to show you that a little bit on the screen here. So if you look under Poor Digital Housekeeping there, the image at the bottom, most scanners are set up by default and they assign a number to the file as it's created unless you manually add a new name. And so if you just take your items and put them on the scanner and scan them and to your thumb drive or whatever, all you're going to get is a bunch of files that look like that on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you will see that we have some folders. Okay, and so what you want to do is create folders and then name that you can understand, of course, and put those inside the folders. I'd like to point out So, and you want to make them as compact as possible. So on the, I get my mouse working here. So you'll see the file that's highlighted around the square that says Alan's idea for reopening the library. You have to be careful about special characters. This one's not too bad, but you don't want to have dots in there. You don't want to have other things included, because your computer might confuse the file name for a file extension, and then you can't find that in the future. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So if you look down 3 files below that one there, that's the same information. So library reopening ideas dash Alan is the same thing as Alan's ideas for reopening the library, and you get all the information you need, but in a more compact and more computer friendly format. Okay, so by not, if you don't have a proper file naming and folder structure, you might end up with multiple copies of the same file or multiple versions of a file, which makes it hard to identify the final version that you want to keep. You need to be even more vigilant in practicing good housekeeping and records management with digital records. When creating files, only use the letters of the Latin alphabet, so A through Z, either capital or small, for file names and folder names. Use hyphens and underscores instead of spaces. Who, what, where, or when is good to have in there, and metadata helps find and identify files later. Metadata options are located under properties for each file. Good housekeeping also means backing up your files on a regular schedule. Everyone here, okay, I'm gonna have to pause for just a minute. Hello. Yes. Okay. We are here. Okay, thank you. Okay, bye. Jay? Good housekeeping also means that backing up your files on a regular schedule. Everyone here in this room who has had a home computer for some time, including me, can testify to lost data due to a hard drive crash or a virus. Being busy people, doing it in a backup tends to be something that we're going to do tomorrow, or most likely we weren't sure how to do it. So schedule your backup with some monthly event, such as paying your mortgage, to help you not to forget. In addition, you should follow the 3-2-1 rule, 3 copies of your file stored on 2 different types of media, with 1 copy stored at another location. If you don't have a computer whiz kid in your family who can help you learn how to back up your files, take a community course on computer basics. If you do have a whiz kid, this could be a great opportunity to gain a convert to family history while he or she helps with the computer. In addition, make sure that when you install newer versions of software or upgrade to a new computer that your files are compatible. Some older versions of software cannot be read by newer versions, and older software definitely cannot read newer versions of software. Also be aware that the backup program on one computer may not read a disk written on another. Finally, with CD burners, make sure you are creating the correct type of file for a backup. I have 3 CDs that I used to create a backup of my laptop files, only to find out that I used the wrong file format. Fortunately, I could read the files using our home desktop and then recreate them so the laptop could read them, but it was a very time-consuming and frustrating process. Finally, software companies love to upgrade their programs with new features, which means that documents created by the early versions may not open properly, if at all. It is important to open up your files with the new version of the software and save them to ensure that you can open them in the future. If you don't clean out the duplicates and the drafts, this could be a very long process. The best method, especially with digital photographs, is to have selected hard copies on permanent paper. This could be done by randomly selecting every 10th image or so, or by selecting your most significant items. If you choose to display photographs or family documents in your home, consider making a copy of the original and displaying that instead of the original. Remember that UV light damage is cumulative and permanent. This is a photograph here of one of the state librarians. It's hanging up in our reading room there. There is no direct sunlight coming into the room, just what's naturally filtered in. And we've replaced all the UV lights in the room, but you can see that the colors have faded again to that sepia tone. If you feel that you must display the original objects, keep the light levels low, just like in a museum. Minimize exposure to ultraviolet light and don't keep it up permanently. Use archival materials for the frame and matting, and you should also use a UV filtering glass. The average life expectancy of UV protection is about 10 years or so, and you're going to have to remember to replace the glass regularly to protect the item. I want to touch a little on disaster. I teach a 3-day course on disaster preparedness and response for state agencies and municipalities, so I'm going to only spend a few minutes on the subject for you. Most records disaster involve water in some fashion. Therefore, water and mold are the most likely things you're going to have to deal with. First and foremost, there is no way to restore a wet item to pristine condition. Paper cockles when it dries, and water stains are inevitable. Be aware that mold can occur in as little as 48 hours. It is important to move the unaffected materials to a dry area with good circulation. Run fans in a dehumidifier to remove any dampness from the affected area. You must remove damp and wet materials from the area and spread them out to dry. If you have more items than space, one of the ways you can handle a lot of more materials is to interleave items with plain white paper towels and replace the towels once they have become quite damp or wet. Blot films and CDs with clean paper towels. Never wipe CDs, especially in a circular motion, or you could create static electricity and erase the information on the CD. Wet photographs, magazines, and yearbooks are going to stick together due to the coating on the paper. If they haven't started to do so, you can hang photographs from a string or fishing line using clothespins or similar style clips on and attach them on the corners. Yearbooks could be stood on end and fan the pages open, and you're going to want to go through and move those pages around, but don't pull together items or pages that have started to stick. There is really no way to save them once they have stuck together. Never increase the room temperature to speed drying, especially by using a portable heater. It only increases the chances of a mold outbreak, and it is a fire and shock hazard. Remember, the higher the technology, the less recoverable the record. A wet piece of paper is usually salvageable. A wet computer disk often is not. So the best solution is prevention. As for fire, most of us don't have the resources for fire suppression systems such as sprinklers. If you take the necessary precaution to protect your home, you will also protect your records. Check your smoke detectors regularly and remove fire hazards from your home. Also, if you have a fire resistive safe or box in your home for important legal documents such as your will or insurance policy, place any original irreplaceable documents in your safe. However, photographs and digital storage media require a fireproof safe specifically for media because the humidity released by the box during a fire to protect its contents could damage those items. Storing valuable original documents in a safety deposit box away from your home is also an alternative. I always get questions about repairing damaged documents. When making any repair, you must ensure that whatever process and materials you use do no harm to the items. The Northeast Document Conservation Center, also known as NEDCC, its website has a series of preservation pamphlets that that describe techniques for surface cleaning, flattening, rolled paper, encapsulation in polyester film, and making cardstock boxes. And I just want to caution you before you do any repairs, practice on discarded materials. Even simple repairs with approved materials can damage your valuable items when you lack experience and sufficient knowledge. Conservators receive years of professional training and are able to judge what the appropriate treatment should be. You'll have to excuse me for just one more minute. Okay, oh, sorry about that. Yes, and one of the things, you see the iron with the document there. I really had this happen with someone who was donating materials to a place I was working at. The individual decided she was going to help us and ironed the documents she was donating to us because they had been folded up. Again, that's heat and it's not good. And I was just really surprised that I found a picture showing that. So yeah, don't do it, please. All right, I would like to touch on one final threat to a family history collection: ignorance and indifference. This threat comes, unfortunately, from within our own families and communities. We've all been victims of this destructive force. For example, a deacon from a small mission church destroyed 100-year-old books containing marriage, birth, and death records because, quote, all the people in here are dead and they're the only ones who'd care, unquote. An executor who decided to toss boxes without looking to see what was in them or without asking if anyone wanted family papers and photographs because he just wanted to get it over with. Or a relative who destroyed correspondence out of spite just to get back at another relative over a 40-year-old spat. And finally, the grieving widow or widower who couldn't deal with the memories that old documents and photographs bring. The key to combating indifference is communication. Share your work with your family and community, especially other members who are involved in genealogical research. Don't let family squabbles put your work and your collection at risk. Find ways to creatively share your family history with the younger generation and get them interested and involved. The Connecticut History Day program, scouting programs for boys and girls, and other youth programs are a great starting point. Even if you have a family member interested in your collection, consider donating good quality copies to your local historical society, genealogical society, or another appropriate repository. Of course, you should make sure that the organization you are donating to has the proper storage environment and other protections for your collections. I should have provided them earlier to Jenna. But I have some handouts and she's going to make them available to you as soon as I can get them all to her. And that I've included a sheet that summarizes many of the items that I've covered this afternoon. It's a good starting place to look for information. There's also these websites. They have all kinds of excellent information available. If you just type in some of the phrases that I used in my headers, you're going to find more than 50 websites. The leaders in the archival profession, such as the National Archives, again, the Northeast Documents Conservation Center, and the Society of American Archivists, and some of the major genealogical organizations also have up-to-date information as well. So thank you for your attention. I hope that I have provided you with some useful information, and again, I apologize about the interruptions. If you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. And just remember, there are no silly or dumb questions, and I will guarantee that someone else probably has the same question. So ask and I can answer it for everybody. So All right, let me get back into Zoom. There we go. Stop sharing. Okay. All right, Lynn.
Hello.
I've
Yeah,
not
so if
Lynn.
anybody has a question, go ahead and type it in the chat and I will happily play moderator.
Okay. Oh, we froze up here. So Kat, available. Jenna can explain how people can access the recording.
Oh, yeah. So we have a YouTube account for the library now. So I'm going to upload it as soon as I have the time. And I'm going to send the link to everybody who registered so you can view it or share it with other people. And I do have a question here. What is buffered paper? Is there another name for this paper and where can you purchase it?
Okay. Buffered paper has alkaline in it, so it would be called alkaline paper. And it's used if you have something that's acidic to help neutralize it. And like I said in my presentation, the alkaline is used up by acid. You can purchase it again in the materials that I'm going to make available through Jenna. There's some information there on where you can get it. University Products and Gaylord Archival is one of the suppliers, but I believe you can also get it like through Michael's because they use it when they're doing framing and things like that. So if you can, you can ask them and see if they carry it.
All right, here's another one. I have written in ink on the back of some old black and white family photos from the 20s to the 50s. Have I ruined them?
The ink may migrate through. It depends on the type of ink it was. You might want to have them make some copies of them just in case it happens and it migrates through. You might want to get them reproduced. I don't mean photocopy, but have them reprinted. And just as a backup in case the ink may migrate, it may not. Okay.
Next question is, do you recommend documenting paper photos onto digital media?
It depends on what you want to do with them. If you're thinking of preserving them by putting in, excuse me, on digital media, as a backup, that's great. If you want to share them with other people so they can see the photographs, that's a great thing. But I don't recommend replacing paper photographs with digital media. The paper is much more stable. You know, so couldn't hear you about what question from Kat. Oh, back up to the digital media. Okay, sorry. I don't recommend using digital media as a replacement for paper photos, but if you're using them as a backup, you can have them scanned. You should scan them create them in a format called TIFF, T-I-F-F. They're large photos, but they capture a lot more data than a JPEG or another format. So that would help you with preservation, just as a backup for the photos in case they ever got wet. All right, I hope that answered it. Madeline said it was a Biro pen. If it's what what I think it is, you're probably okay. If it's a ballpoint pen, again, you might have problems with the link, but I think the Bureau pen is a type of permanent marker that should be okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
How would you recommend labeling photos? Like who's in the photo? What would be the best way to do that?
Lightly, you would want to put on the back of the photograph in a soft pencil. You would want, you'd put it down and very lightly write on the back in pencil, the information. Don't put it on top of another piece of paper, or, you know, we tend to like to write on soft things. But if you do that lightly with a pencil, you can, that's one of the best ways. The other way is to, if you're putting them in a photo sleeve, is to write the information on the sleeve itself and then put the photo in there.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question?
You're always welcome to contact me at the State Library. Again, I'll be providing you with the slides that you can print out, and my contact information is on there. So if you have a question, feel free to email me, and I can get back to you with the question. But I think a lot of information will be in the handouts that I'm going to be sharing with Jenna. So.
Okay, excellent.
Oh,
Thank
clothing. Somebody asked
Oh.
about, no, I am not a clothing conservator. I cannot speak to clothing. I can only do paper, electronics, photographs. And even then I'm not an expert, so.
Are there any places you know of that would be good to contact for something like that?
You could go to, it's AIC. I think it's the American Institute of Conservators. I think that's their title, and they handle all, they do paintings and all kinds of different things. You could probably find some information there on for clothing. The one thing, if you go to Gaylord and University Products, I know they do sell boxes in tissue paper, so you probably do want to store the clothing in, again, the buffered boxes with the tissue paper and wrapped up. But more information than that, I don't know. Sorry. A lot of alarms ringing. How we prepare. Yeah, sorry. But I hope I gave you information that will help you alleviate your concerns.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this. And like I said, I'll send around the handouts and the recording with the email address you used to register. So keep an eye out for that. But I think that's everything. So thank you, Lizette. That was very informative.
All right. I was happy to do it. Thanks.